a touchy subject between art and craft, and what is fine art, and could
Hmm.
ceramics be considered craft?
Baked Out Radio Show, man. They everywhere.
All right, y'all, tuning in for another episode of Baked Out Radio Show. I'm your host, Andreas, and I have on Zoom with me Morgan McCarver, based out of South Carolina. You said Ashford, right?
I'm in
North Carolina.
Asheville, North Carolina, although you're not wrong. I'm
Ashford.
originally from upstate South Carolina.
See, I
So,
knew there's South Carolina somewhere.
yep, yeah. I'm a Carolina girl. I've now lived in both Carolinas.
How is it, by the way, like, going from one Carolina to the next, as far as like culture and everything?
Sure, yeah. Well, the big joke is the roads, like in South Carolina, the
Mhm.
tax money doesn't always go to roads. And so that's the big joke. You can always tell when you're in North Carolina because
Mm.
the roads are smoother.
Oh,
But you're
wow.
right. It can be a big difference, especially coming from a relatively small town in upstate South Carolina. And now
Mhm.
I'm in Asheville, North Carolina. So
Mhm.
yeah, it's a different culture, a different vibe. But
Mhm.
Asheville really has some strong art supporters, and that's why I moved up here, and I really like it.
That's what's up. I'm glad you've been able to find some very supportive part. Because one, I don't think people realize the amount of work that y'all put in as far as being an artist. And I'm talking about like all sorts of artists because I deal with recording artists, I deal with painters. Ceramics is just the pottery, right?
It is. Yep.
I remember.
Good job.
I went, what was it, back when I was it was a long time ago. I think elementary school or middle school I went to, because I'm originally from Tennessee.
Okay.
And there was somewhere, I can't remember exactly, it was out the skirts of Nashville or whatever, but I went to like this place where it was set up like with log cabins and all that. And it's supposed to show like, the 18 or 1900s, something like that type
Oh
of
yeah.
lifestyle. And they had people there making ceramics, and I got to do that.
That's
Um,
awesome.
yeah, so it was a great experience. And then here recently, my son, he goes to high school here, and he took a class in ceramics, and he made like little cups and bowls and saucers and things of that
Oh,
nature. So I thought that
cool.
was pretty cool. Yeah. So
Yeah,
being
good
able
for
to
him.
still be able to have that art craft that people don't realize, that it's
Yeah.
still but yeah, I was going through your bio, and you have a very interesting story, especially getting over scoliosis. Um,
Yes.
so
Yeah,
yeah, just go
it's
ahead and dive into that. Like, tell us about your
sure.
journey.
Yes, it has been a journey, and it's not your stereotypical way of finding ceramics.
Mhm.
But basically you're right. Scoliosis is kind of how I found ceramics, which is just crazy. But I was, in middle school. I loved to dance, especially Irish step dancing, which
Mhm.
is very niche in and of itself. But
Mhm.
I was a competitive dancer as a hobby, and that kind of all came to a stop when I was diagnosed with scoliosis. I did the doctors gave me a back brace that I wore for a while to try to correct my spine.
Mhm.
And for those who aren't familiar, scoliosis is the curving of the spine. So I had
Mhm.
an S curve, but it was a triple curve. So there were three different curves they were working on in my back. So it was
Mhm.
pretty much my entire spine was affected by this. And basically the bracing didn't really hold the spine like they wanted it to. And
Mhm.
so when I had stopped growing, they kind of realized like this is only going to get worse. And so that's when I actually had the corrective surgery. And I have two titanium rods and about 18 screws that are holding my
Mhm.
spine straight.
Oh, wow.
Yes. And so that all happened in eighth grade.
Mhm.
So I was pretty young, and that was pretty traumatizing, of course. And I lost
Mhm.
my creative outlet because I couldn't dance anymore. And that was a year-long recovery
Mhm.
before I could even start to try to dance again and everything.
Mhm.
And during that time, I really needed a creative outlet. And my mom signed me up for a student pottery class, just stereotypical, go to the art center and do some kids craft kind of things. And I really fell in love with it. The clay, just it being so malleable, and you're able to do whatever you want pretty much with the clay. I mean, of course, there's boundaries, but it's just so freeing, such a freeing material, and it's so hands-on. And I just love hands-on. And I just love that connection and that experience. And so I just kept taking classes, even when there weren't really classes for my specific age group, like my high school didn't offer it. And so I would take classes in the evenings, and they were really geared more toward retirees. So I'm like by far the youngest one in there by like 30 years or more. And they're all, doing their wine and pottery on the wheel, having a good, like relaxing evening. And I'm, making a mess and enjoying every minute of it. And that was just such a special community. That was really my first pottery community. And they just took me under their wings so much, just guiding me and allowing me to be there, including me, and just letting me really explore for the first time what ceramics really was. And then from there, I loved it so much that I actually went to Anderson University, South Carolina. It's the South Carolina School of the Arts, and I got a degree in ceramics. And so it's really just that moment that I had that scoliosis surgery. It felt like the worst thing that could have happened, but it was such a pivotal moment to point me towards my passion that I probably, I don't know if I ever would have discovered it without having to take a step back, take a break from dance, and get into another creative outlet like pottery. And from there, as they say, the rest is history. I've taught ceramics. I've worked at ceramic supply stores. I worked for a potter for a while. That's what brought me to Asheville. I apprenticed under her, and she was a great mentor to me. And now I have my own studio space. It's kind of a group of us. We all rent out different areas in this huge warehouse building. And it's another just amazing community. And so I'm in Asheville, making pots, and it's been great.
That's what's up. I'm glad you was able to turn that into a business. And I know that, getting your education as well could seem a little funny to others. So how was that? What I'm saying, explaining that, because while you're doing that journey, people's like, okay, you're doing what now? You get a degree on what? And how are you going to make a living with that?
Exactly. So my parents were very smart. They said, okay, you can, if you want to do that, you can do that, but you must get a business minor. And I think that was a great idea on their part. Of course, at the time, I was like, you've got to be kidding me, math and whatnot, accounting classes. And but I ended up getting the business minor. And then I also have an art history minor just because I love art history and culture and research. But it was a lot of people said, what are you going to do with that? Which I think people, say things and they don't realize. But my classmates and I would joke around, and it's like, you could say that about just about any major. When you ask people what they went to college for, it's very rare that they're actually doing that as their career, And so, especially a lot of my co-students, if you will, their parents forced them into graphic design. They wanted a creative major, and their parents said, well, do graphic design. That is where the money is. That's where the jobs are, because it's the business version of a creative job, right? But then the market was flooded with graphic designers because so many people are training for graphic design. And so it's just that balance of, what, if you flood the market, then there's no job security anyway. And so that was hard, though, hearing that question over and over. What are you going to do with that? What are you going to do with that? And I'm a Christian, so I would just say, the Lord is going to guide me in that. And I originally applied to study art ed. I was going to be an art teacher. And my professor, after getting to know me and kind of mentoring me along the way, she really encouraged me to really focus on my art, and step back from the teaching side of things. And I really agreed with that decision. I really liked that she was able to guide me in that way. But it's also hilarious how many other versions of teaching I've ended up with, not in the public school system, but just like I was the president of the ceramics club at the college for 2 years. And so I was teaching classes to my fellow classmates there. And then out of school, I taught some private lessons with the ceramic supply company. I was kind of the main head of the studio at that time. So I did some private lessons then. And then when COVID hit, there were some precious middle school girls who really wanted to take art. And so not only was I teaching pottery, I actually did a 16-week class with them where we did drawing, painting, sculpture, and ceramics. And so I taught them for a while. And then moving up to Asheville, I've done some private lessons as well. And now I'm getting into helping with my church and teaching the students that are involved in the church as well. And so it's very interesting how everything kind of keeps coming back to teaching with me not even being in the school setting. But to answer your question, to circle back around, I don't really regret my decision to major in ceramics. I think it was a great choice. Do I have a full-time job now that is not ceramics? Yes, I do. Because I really like those benefits, I can tell you that. But I also like I can't lie to you. But I also like the structure. I learned when I was working for the Potter for the year and a half, I learned I don't really like to be my own boss because I'm a mean boss to myself. I don't let myself take breaks. I'm like, you got to keep going. You know, there's still daylight to burn. Keep working. Yeah. And so I really like having that kind of work-life balance or side work balance, if you will, of going to a job, going to my 8 to 5, having that structure, leaving, and then having those moments in the studio or whatever I'm doing in the evenings. And of course, Saturdays, I'm usually in the studio as well. But I like how everything has turned out. Who knows what'll happen in the future? But that's kind of where I am now.
Yeah, and I can also imagine that, you know, you don't have to put that pressure on yourself as far as like, you know, delivering on things in a short amount of time. And also having a pressure of I got to hit like, you know, X amount of projects so I can make X amount of money because you do have the other traditional 8 to 5.
Exactly. Yeah, that's a great way to put it. So I was trained more in the fine art sense of the ceramics world. And that can kind of be a touchy subject between art and craft and what is fine art and could ceramics be considered craft or fine art? And I was trained more in like the fine art side of things, like having a concept behind your work, having a theme where all of your pieces mingle together. They all look fluid. They're all similar. And my personality, I don't really follow the trends. So I'm not going to make that thing that you see on TikTok or Pinterest just because it sells, because that's not the fun for me. The fun for me is really creating pieces based on my concept, my themes, the things I've researched, and really incorporating those styles into what I'm making. And so I've found outlets for my work where it sells really well, but that also means that not everyone loves my work. And you're right. If I was doing this as a full-time job constantly, then I would really feel the pressure to make what sells. And that to me takes the joy out of the art making process. I would rather have the thought and the creativity behind it than to just make what everybody else is making just so I can make money.
Yeah. Then, you know, once you get to the point where, you know, you're well renowned and everything, then you can charge like, you know, absorbers amounts for your pieces. Yeah. That way it floats you between creativity spaces.
Exactly.
So I get it. So you're also your book. Is it coming out soon, or have you already published it?
It is in the process of coming out. So it's available for pre-order now, as of this recording. And it is published through Morgan James Publishing out of New York. So they're well-known national publishers. Even though it's my name, people say, oh, it must be self-published because you're Morgan. I say, no, not exactly. But that'd be cool to own my own publishing company or something. Who knows?
Mhm.
But it's coming out January 9th is the official release date. But you can pre-order now through Barnes and Noble, wherever books are sold. You can order online. You can find that on my website and everything. But yeah, it's called God the Artist is the title.
Mhm.
And it is really just an inspirational account of biblical references to pottery and how they relate to the Bible, pretty much in a simple way. Basically, there's a lot of different references to pottery that I think get overlooked sometimes between the Old and New Testaments. There's so many different references between clay and how that works, or pottery in general, or finished pieces. And I'm really approaching those verses specifically from my ceramic background and also from my Christian background, and kind of unpacking them and saying, okay, looking at these verses, what does this mean, knowing what we know about ceramics? And so I really walk through the process of ceramics with the reader. So I say you don't have to be a potter or a ceramicist to understand the book, and you don't have to be a Christian either. I kind of walk through both of those things chapter by chapter as we go through the book. And oh, go ahead.
I'm sorry. Go ahead. I'm sorry. I didn't want to interrupt you.
No, you're good. Basically, I set it up as each chapter kind of delves more deeply into the ceramic process. So we start at the very beginning just with clay. What is clay? What are different types of clay? How can you find clay? And relating that to the Christian experience. For example, there's verses in the Bible that talk about we as humans are the clay and God is the potter, because he has the design for our lives and he knows what's going on. And the clay doesn't know what's going on when the potter grabs it and throws it on the wheel. And so we start at the very basics and we go more in depth, more intricate, and more about the techniques, different firing processes, glazing. And as we walk through the book from the ceramic standpoint, there's verses along the way that tie that back to the Christianity side of it as well.
So what inspired the book then?
Kind of everything. So it does talk about my scoliosis experience and how I found ceramics through that. But I guess really the inspiration came in about 2019. That's when I graduated from Anderson with my degree. And at that time, my professors were really good about relating things back to our faith, back to Christianity. And I thought there has to be some kind of devotional book or something I could read that is about this. And there really wasn't anything that I could find that is what I was looking for. And I really, at that point, I felt the Holy Spirit calling me to kind of jot down some ideas. But I've been a Christian for so many years, since I was 7 years old, and I never read through the Bible all the way. And so that was really convicting me. And I decided at that point to read through the Bible from Genesis to Revelation, just start to finish. And that took me about 3 years. And in the midst of that, I was trying to get the first draft published. And so I reached out to a publisher. This was pretty much right before the pandemic. It was 2019. And they said, well, it needs a lot of work here and there. We need to elaborate on some parts and take some parts out. And you might need a ghostwriter, or at least you'd need to pay an editor to do a whole lot of rewriting. And it would be self-published anyway. And I prayed a lot about it. And I had just graduated college, so I didn't have all that money to throw at a project. And so at that point, I felt like the Holy Spirit was telling me, you don't have enough experience anyway. And looking back at that rough draft, oh my goodness, I really did not have a whole lot of experience. And so I thought that meant, 20, 30 years, I'll do something amazing with my life and be retired and be bored and write a book or something. And it was like 3 years. That was a lot quicker than I thought. But in that time, after graduation, that's when I worked for the ceramic studio. I taught those classes. I did those private lessons. I moved to Asheville and I worked under a potter, and I learned so much from that experience. I love my ceramics degree. I learned so much in college, but there's something to be said about just real world experience in whatever you're doing. And so I learned so much in those 3 years that this past January, I really felt the Holy Spirit saying to revisit the book. And because of circumstances, I had some free time, and I pretty much rewrote the whole thing at that point and began looking for publishers just based on other books that I really enjoyed. And there's a publisher out in Oregon, and they said, this is a great idea, but we don't really have the capacity right now. We've got a lot of things on hold. And so they referred me to Morgan James Publishing. And at that point, I was working with, my contact was Terry Wallen, and he's amazing. But he didn't turn me down immediately. And that's what I really appreciated. He just said, this is pretty short. Can you make it at least 1/3 longer? And I loved that feedback because that was something that I could do. That was something I could work on. And at that point, I said, sure, yes, I can work on that. In about a week and a half, I doubled the word count and sent it back to him for review. And he forwarded it on to the review committee. And they read my application and read over everything and decided to give me a shot. That was in April. I got the acceptance letter. And it's just been such an amazing experience ever since. They've just been great to work with, and it's just been a roller coaster. And it's really challenged me. I'm just growing as I'm promoting the book as well. I thought the hardest part was over writing the manuscript, but
no, that's when the work begins.
Exactly. Yeah, which it's good that you don't know that kind of thing up front, right? Sometimes it's best to go into something so naive, and then once you're there, you've got to do the work. It's just been so much fun, and getting on podcasts like yours, it's just amazing. And so that's where I am now with the book, just really promoting it, and looking forward to January 9th.
Yeah, I was about to say, I know you were so excited and everything when it drops, and be able to see the response. And I'm sure you're not looking at it from the standpoint of, I want to sell X amount of copies. You just want to be able to put it out there and see how people soak it up and enjoy it, and how it turns their life around. So with that being said, your work with the church and marketing the book for, God, the artist, and pottery, and then still working. How do you find balance between all of those tasks?
That is hard. That's a great question. I've been reading a lot of books on boundaries and setting boundaries for myself. But I think the beauty of it is every day looks different than the next, and every week looks different than the previous week. And it's really just a juggling act. Of course, prioritizing God and his will above everything else. But then after that, it's really just a balance of what needs to get done first. What do I have time for in the moment? Using a lot of lunch breaks, pulling a lot of late nights. But just remembering, this is all fun for me. I'm enjoying every minute of it, whether I'm in the studio or doing computer work or, promoting on social media. I love the variety too. I think if I was just doing one thing, I'd get so bored. And so the beauty of being able to make every day different is what keeps me going.
Yeah, I can sense that from you as being a creative. So what's one thing about just business and your creativity being attached to the business that you necessarily don't like or didn't really realize was part of that process?
Oh, that's a good question. I think promoting on social media is one of the things I didn't realize would be what it is. Just with algorithms, and then algorithms change, and trying to keep up with trending audio, and it feels like it takes the fun out of what social media was supposed to be, which is promoting your thing. And now it's more about staying with the trends and what kind of hashtag is going to give me the numbers I need, and why isn't my post being seen by my own following, and that I feel like it sucks a lot of time and joy out of just marketing in general. But that's also just knowing the nature of the beast, and knowing that's where our culture is looking for most of our marketing. You can't avoid it. So I've kind of, I've increased my social media because of that. But I don't necessarily enjoy it. There are times I do, I'll get a good idea for a post, or I participated in Inktober this past October. And for those who don't know, basically, it's pretty cool. It's a free thing anyone can do, but there's a prompt for every day of October. And so the idea is to draw that prompt called Inktober. But I kind of took a ceramic spin on it. And so I was drawing with glazes on tiles and firing them and really making my own spin. So that was really fun to kind of participate in something that's considered a trend in my own way. But for the most part, social media is becoming more and more dreaded as one of my tasks.
Yeah, no, I definitely get that. I get like, I'm stubborn, so
Mm,
I like to just create my own content and just put it out there, and it just does what it does. I hardly ever follow trends. I stopped doing it a long time ago because I came to the conclusion that, you know, once you start following trends and that's how you build like your audience, you have to keep doing that.
yeah,
As opposed to creating original content and then putting this, even if it's something that is inspired by something else, still put your own spin on it and then let people just gravitate towards it and just push it that way.
right.
And that model has worked pretty well for me.
Okay.
Doing that, whatever. So I'll have to see some neat stuff like that. I created my own character and all that stuff to help
Oh,
push
cool.
various things. Yeah, not just the podcast and platform that I have is one thing, and I also have a few other businesses as well. And I use the character to push one of my hemp-based businesses called the Cook Shop, where it's natural hemp-based products.
Hmm.
Only due to the fact that Facebook and Instagram both threatened me to at the time when they were split, or Meta. They threatened to shut my accounts down because they was associating hemp with just weed and marijuana and all that. And I'm like,
Okay.
I see all this other stuff on social media that shouldn't even
Hmm.
be there, but you want to threaten me as a company that is natural products. So I got it and everything, but I didn't like it, so that's how I adapted. Created a character. Now the character has been turned into his own brand and all that stuff. The people love the character, and it's just hilarious now. And it's like one of my creative outlets that I have. So I love like original stuff.
That's great.
Um, with your business, I imagine the space you said is it like a co-op space that y'all all have together. Is that how that works?
Yeah, it's more of a studio. So we don't necessarily have like gallery space where we sell out of the space. So
Okay.
it's less of a co-op in that way. And more of there's a head artist. Her name is Melissa Weiss, and she's pretty famous
Mm-hmm.
in the ceramics world. And she has her own space, and then she rents out other spaces to the rest of us. And
Mm-hmm.
so it's all different types of ceramics. It's all pottery, but
Mm-hmm.
that's the beauty of it. There's different styles and
Mm-hmm.
techniques, and some people are very much more like earthy, mountain feel type pottery. And then, of course, I do like more blue and white floral type things.
Mm-hmm.
There's some like sculptural people who
Mm-hmm.
do beautiful wall sculptures. There's all different firing methods and glazes and
Mm-hmm.
colors, and just walking through, it's really amazing. We do have like a December studio sale that will open
Mm-hmm.
up the space, and guest
Mm-hmm.
artists come in, and it's just a really fun time. But for the most part, we're all pretty serious.
Mm-hmm.
This is our hustle or our side hustle.
Mm-hmm.
And so when we get in there, we are
Mm-hmm.
able to have great community, but we're also there to work. So
Yeah.
we lock the doors, get stuff
Mm-hmm.
done. All hours of the night, you'll find people in there, and
Yeah.
that's part of the beauty of it too. There's
Yeah.
always someone in there working, and so you can always bounce ideas off of somebody else, and the community is just really nice.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. I bet it's a nice creative space for all of y'all where you
It
can bounce
is.
ideas and like work with one another, collaboration, things of that nature. What was it? I think okay. So I know that in your bio you have where your work is in galleries around the Carolinas and in Tennessee.
Mhm.
How was that process? Like, how did you get your work into like your first gallery, and then how did you grow it?
Yeah, that's a great question. It my very first gallery was in downtown Spartanburg, South Carolina, and they're still going strong. I need to bring more things there actually now that I think about it. But it's always something you're like, oh yeah, I need to
Uh-huh.
do that. But it's called the Kindred Spirits, and it's right downtown. Um, and it's so so interesting how I find myself in situations. So basically, my high school German teacher decided to open up the Kindred Spirits. She
Mhm.
was a seamstress and a jeweler, and she knew I did pottery, and I was still in college at the time, I believe. And she asked me if I wanted to put some things in there, and I said yes. And it was a great first start. And from there, it really depends. Some galleries like you to apply and fill out
Mhm.
paperwork, send pictures, or take pieces in person. And then sometimes it's word of mouth, or a friend is in the gallery. And that's another good thing about having community space. When you
Mhm.
can talk to other people and say, like, oh, did this gallery work for you? Or this festival? How did it go for you?
Mhm.
And so that's kind of how I've ended up in different places. Sometimes people reach out to me, which I love because that means I already know that my work will be well received there. So
Mhm.
that's happened a couple of times. And it's just such a nice feeling because those are the people who are running their galleries well. They know what their customers are looking for. And so you're going in with a fan base pre-built
Mhm.
for you in a way. And delivering work there is always so much fun because they're your
Mhm.
fans. They're cheering. They're like, thank you so much for bringing your work.
Mhm.
And it just depends on situations. And there's some that I've tried, and um, each gallery is different. So basically, some of them you pay per month. You
Mhm.
kind of rent a space, and then others they take commission, so they don't charge
Mhm.
you until your piece sells. And some do both. So that just
Mhm.
kind of depends on the setup. But I'll usually try one. I have a hard time saying no, so I'll try it, and I'll have an X number of months for myself. And if I'm not making money or not making enough by that amount of time,
Mhm.
then I'll pull out and try somewhere
Mhm.
else because it's inventory, right? So you've got your
Mhm.
inventory all spread out. So if it's just sitting
Mhm.
somewhere that's not selling, that those are pots that I don't have to
Mhm.
make. They're already created, and I could be selling them somewhere else.
Yeah.
So it really just depends on the situation, and every gallery is different, and every gallery owner is different. And that's part
Mhm.
of the fun too. I don't have the same amount or the same type of pieces in every gallery. I have my same style, like I was talking about earlier, my same brand,
Mhm.
but I'm even in like in downtown Asheville, I'm in the art museum gift shop. And so I have
Mhm.
my fanciful like teapots and mugs and like the bigger ticket items there.
Mhm.
And then just several blocks, several streets down, I'm in High Climate Tea Company, which is a traditional Chinese tea shop. And so I do a
Mhm.
lot of custom work for them. I make the little sencha cups and different
Mhm.
types of tea pets, like little animal figurines and things. So it's
Mhm.
still all of my body of work, but depending on the customer, depending on the
Mhm.
shop or the tea culture, even, I'm making different types of things for different galleries, which again keeps it interesting. It keeps me from getting bored making the same thing over and over.
Yeah, which bit is very, saying it helps scratch that creative, side of you.
Mhm.
Have you gotten to the point to where you're now having, I guess, what would you call it, apprentices, or is that a word?
Oh yeah, like apprentices.
Yeah. So your apprentices, yeah, where they're working
uh
up under you, and you're showing them the ropes and teaching them like the business of art.
Not yet. I can see that happening in the future with my church. I think we're really going to try to offer more ceramics type
Hmm.
events for them. And I think that could be really cool. I recently was awarded a grant and I was able to get a portable pottery wheel. So now I can
Hmm.
take my wheel places and do events like that. And so I could
Hmm.
see I love to help and I love to solve problems. So I could
Hmm.
see myself doing that down the line. But for right now, with my business, it's just me, which is fine. I
Yeah.
like controlling things. So I like having my hand in every part of it.
Uh-huh.
Except for the schlepping pots all around the
Yeah.
stuff. If someone wants to
Yeah.
help me load my car, then sure.
Yeah. Yeah. I can imagine. Well, Morgan, is there anything that, what I'm saying, we didn't get to touch on that you want to touch on?
I don't think so. You've been a great host. You've covered just about all of it. I would just say for any of the listeners out there, if you are in a visual art type medium, don't be afraid to take risks. Some of the best experiences I've had, I read just enough of the application information to make a calculated risk, so I knew that I could fulfill, or I knew the dates would work out. And I didn't think I was fully qualified, but I applied anyway. And you never know who will say yes and what kind of experience that'll open up. Especially being young, a lot of people will take a chance on you just because you're young and ready to put in the work. And so I would say don't let yourself hesitate in that way. Just take the risks and see what happens. And those risks might not feel like something major, but there's been events that I've done that have led to other events. Just because I'm there, someone reached out to me. So I would just give that word of encouragement.
What's up? I love it. So everybody out there, y'all, if y'all want to go to Morgan's website, it is morganmccarver.com. It's McCarver.com. Morgan McCarver. Morgan, thank you for your time, and I'd love to have you back on and see where your story takes you. Because you have
Yeah, I would love
fantastic
that. Thank
story.
you so much.
Yeah,
Thanks for having me. This has been great.
I'm glad you enjoyed it. That's what I'm supposed to do. I'm supposed to be able to show that experience, and you have a good time. So I think I did my job.
Yeah, it's been awesome.